What up, everybody? In the BMF series, the character Markisha was first introduced in Season 1, Episode 1 at Pat's party, and her role in the show has got bigger every season since, as in real life, how the person the character Markisha is based off, Tonesa Welch, played a bigger and bigger role in Terry Flenory's life as time went on. Tonesa Welch played such a key role in the BMF organization that she even has her own movie on BET Plus called The First Lady of BMF, where she tells her side of the story, because Tonesa Welch has been on the record before saying that she doesn't like how her character has been portrayed in the BMF series. And I think there was still a little bad blood between the Flenory brothers and Tonesa at the time, because her movie was decent, but it did make the Flenory brothers look like a couple of goofies. So in my honest opinion, each side is telling a story from a perspective to make themselves look good and the other side look a little bad. The show starts off in the year 1981, and at this point, Tonesa was 19 years old. She already had one child at this time, her oldest son, and his father wasn't in the picture because he was away at college. Tonesa was always leaving her son with her mother and her stepdad for them to babysit when she went out. And one night in 1981, Tonesa went out to a club on the east side of Detroit where a lot of the big-time players in the drug game was going to be when she met her future husband, Harold Mills. Harold Mills is portrayed as Boom in the BMF series. So after dating Harold for a while, when Tonesa was 20 years old, she moved in with Harold and left her oldest son with her mother and her stepdad. Soon after this, Tonesa let Harold know that she wanted into life so she could start making her own money. So Harold started Tonesa out doing a check cashing scam where they would use fake IDs and write checks for big ticket items and either keep them for themselves or sell them. Then in the year 1983, Harold finally started letting Tonesa get involved in the drug game. It was also around this time Tonesa began to share ideas with Harold about how they could advance in the game. And one day, when she gave him the idea about selling coke on the west side, he felt like she was overstepping. And this is when Harold beat Tonesa for the first time. To make things even worse, after beating her for the first time, he gave her some coke to sniff, and Tonesa began to spiral out of control with her partying and her cocaine use at this time. Because around this time, Harold also got locked up soon after the first time he put hands on Tonesa and had to do a 2-year bid. During the time of Harold's 2-year bid, Tonesa began to level up on her own and was dating a member of the Young Boys Incorporated gang who got her pregnant with her second child. Then in the year 1985, after Harold did his 2-year bid, he got home to find Tonesa in the house with another man, her baby daddy, old boy from the Young Boys Incorporated, and the two had a confrontation when Harold threatened dude to never come back and took his child to raise as his own. Soon after that, Harold went back to his old ways, always putting hands on Tonesa, and one night when he laid hands on her, she stabbed him, but Harold didn't press any charges. After that, Tonesa went to rehab for 6 months to get clean, then moved back in with her parents. After some time had passed because of Harold's charm, giving Tonesa gifts and things like that, he won her back over, and she moved back in with him at this time. And at this point, she took her sons from her parents, and they moved in with her at Harold's. Then we get to the year 1987, when Harold and Tonesa meet the Flenory brothers, Meech and Terry, for the first time. Soon after meeting the Flenory brothers, Tonesa said her and Terry began to have a friendship, and he became her confidant, but they didn't begin to have a sexual relationship until later on down the line. This was when the Flenory brothers was still in their 50 boys days, and it was said that they were making a lot of noise out in the streets and moving a lot of weight, but they weren't making a lot of money because at this time they were still working under their first boss, E.D. Boyd. Then in the late 80s, after working for E.D. Boyd, the movie says that Meech and Terry started working under Harold and getting their weight from him, and that's when they first started coming up in the game. Keep it in mind that the BMF series never shows Meech and Terry working under Boom, but only getting weight for him one time. But like I said at the beginning of the video, each side is telling their side of the story from their own perspective and making themselves look a little better and downplaying the other side's significance. So because of that, the truth is probably somewhere in the middle. Because we also know from the BMF documentary that around 1989, the Flenory brothers started getting their weight from Lawrence Newell, portrayed as K9 in the BMF series. And according to that, this is when they really started coming up in the game. I don't think the documentary even said anything about them getting weight from Harold. And I don't remember if it even too much mentions Tonesa like that. That's why part 2 of the documentary will be important, with Terry sharing his side of the story and what he has to say about Tonesa and Harold. But it was in the late 80s when Harold got Tonesa pregnant himself, and she had her third son with Harold. Then in the late 80s, early 90s, when the Flenory brothers began to take over Detroit, at this point Harold and Tonesa expanded their operation into Houston and Chicago. And in the year 1991, Harold got arrested in Houston, Texas, and ended up serving 7 years in prison. And we've seen Boom already arrested at the end of season 2 in the BMF series, a couple years before he actually got arrested in real life. Keeping in mind that some of the names and dates have been changed, but a lot of the shit from the show actually happened. But at this point is when the movie shows Tonesa getting married to Harold when he was in custody, because supposedly that helped him get a better deal. But I do wonder if that was all to the story, or was the movie possibly covering for Harold snitching to get a better deal by showing him marrying Tonesa? Because in the BMF series in episode 1, it showed Markisha turning to Boom while he was in jail, and they ultimately hooked Terry up with a guy named Isaac Roberts. And I think there's a good chance that Isaac Roberts is working with the feds. But after being arrested in Texas, Harold did a 7-year bid and got out of prison in the year 1998. But by the year 1998, when Harold got out of prison, Tonesa had already moved on, and at that point she was in a relationship with Terry Flenory. According to Tonesa, her and Terry began a sexual relationship in the year 1995, when Terry was 25 years old. By the late 90s, Tonesa and Terry were always going back and forth between Detroit and LA to oversee the operation based out in LA. But then one night in the year 2000, Harold got his revenge. Harold crashed into Tonesa's car, beat her down and pulled a gun on her, but decided not to shoot her, but left her for dead on the side of the road. After this, when Tony got out of the hospital, is when her and Terry left Detroit for good and moved to LA to live full time. Then in the year 2005, during the BMF RICO case, when Meech and Terry were indicted, Tonesa was also arrested and had to serve 4.5 years in prison. But Tony's oldest son, who I mentioned at the beginning of this video, and her nephews also got caught up in the RICO case after they started working for Terry sometime in the early 2000s. And there you have it. Leave your thoughts, theories, and predictions in the comments.